On Independence Day night, when America was celebrating freedom, Emily Carter lost hers in front of everyone. Inside the grand hall of the Whitmore mansion, red, white, and blue decorations covered the marble walls. Crystal chandeliers glittered above politicians, business leaders, and wealthy guests raising champagne glasses beneath the American flags. Outside, fireworks were waiting to light up the sky, but before the celebration could truly begin, one sharp slap echoed through the entire room. Emily, the quiet housemaid no one ever looked at twice, stood in the center of the hall with tears in her eyes. One hand was still trembling in the air. The other held a small gift box, crushed, torn, and wrinkled, as if someone had thrown her feelings into the trash. Her eyes were filled with humiliation, pain, and a hatred born from being hurt too deeply. In front of her stood Alexander Whitmore, the billionaire owner of the mansion. His face was frozen in shock. Only moments earlier, he had defended Emily when Victoria Hayes, the elegant woman everyone believed belonged beside him, accused the maid of stealing her priceless diamond bracelet. Alexander had said Emily was not a thief. Then Emily slapped him. And in that perfect moment of chaos, Victoria stepped closer, pretending to help. With one hidden push, the missing bracelet suddenly slipped from Emily's uniform and fell onto the marble floor. The entire party went silent. If you want to know who truly lied that night, stay with this story and subscribe to the channel, because this was not just a scandal at an Independence Day party. It was the beginning of a cruel trap, a broken heart, and a truth powerful enough to destroy everyone in that mansion. Emily Carter was poor, but she was not guilty. Alexander Whitmore was rich, but he was blind to the woman standing beside him. And Victoria Hayes smiled like a victim, while hiding the darkest secret in the room. That night, Emily was thrown out in tears. But the next morning, Alexander found a single elegant button on his office floor, and everything he believed began to collapse. And that single elegant button Alexander would find the next morning did not fall there by accident. Its story began the night before, under the bright lights of the Whitmore mansion, when the entire house was dressed in red, white, and blue for Independence Day. The grand hall looked like a scene from a magazine. American flags hung between marble columns. Crystal chandeliers poured golden light over polished floors. A string quartet played near the staircase, while waiters moved silently through the crowd with silver trays of champagne. Outside, the first fireworks were waiting to explode above the private gardens. But inside the mansion, something far more dangerous was already burning. Emily Carter stood near the service entrance with a tray in her hands and a quiet ache in her chest. To the guests, she was almost invisible, just another housemaid in a black and white uniform. They looked past her, through her, around her. But Emily had learned not to show pain in rooms like this. Rich people could smell weakness, and some of them enjoyed stepping on it. Still, tonight was different. Hidden in a small drawer behind the service pantry was a gift box she had wrapped herself. It was not expensive. It was not something a billionaire like Alexander Whitmore would ever need, but it mattered. Inside was an old silver compass she had found at an antique shop and carefully restored. Months earlier, Emily had overheard Alexander say that his late father once kept a compass on his desk and told him, "A man who loses direction loses everything." The original had disappeared years ago. Emily knew her gift could never replace it, but she hoped it might remind him that someone had listened. Across the room, Alexander Whitmore stood in a black tuxedo, surrounded by senators, CEOs, and old money families who spoke his name with respect. At 36, he was one of the most powerful men in New York real estate. He had the kind of face people trusted in business and feared in negotiations, calm, sharp, almost unreadable. Beside him was Victoria Hayes. She wore a red evening gown that seemed designed to make every camera turn toward her. Beautiful, elegant, and perfectly aware of both, Victoria smiled as if the mansion already belonged to her. Most people believed she would become Mrs. Whitmore before the year ended. Victoria believed it too. That was why she noticed things others ignored. She noticed when Alexander's eyes followed Emily longer than necessary. She noticed when he thanked Emily by name. And she noticed the small gift box Emily carried toward Alexander's private study earlier that evening. Victoria had not spent years climbing into Alexander's world just to lose him to a maid with tired hands and honest eyes. A little before 9, Victoria's voice cut through the music. "My bracelet," she said, touching her bare wrist. "My diamond bracelet is gone." The nearest guest turned. Then more followed. Within seconds, the murmurs spread through the hall. Victoria looked pale, but not too pale. Shaken, but still beautiful. She played distress like a woman who had practiced in the mirror. Alexander stepped toward her. "When did you last have it?" "In the dressing room," Victoria said. Her eyes moved, slowly and deliberately, toward Emily. Only a few people were near that room tonight. Emily felt the air change before anyone said her name. The guests began to look at her, not as a person, but as a possibility. A poor girl, a servant, someone who could be blamed without consequence. "I didn't touch anything," Emily said, her voice steady though her fingers tightened around the tray. Victoria gave a soft, wounded laugh. "I never said you did." But everyone heard what she meant. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, Alexander's mother, stood near the staircase with a glass of wine in her hand and judgment already written across her face. "Alexander," she said coldly, "this must be handled before the press hears a word of it." Alexander looked at Emily. For one long second, she could not breathe. Then he said, "Emily didn't steal your bracelet." The room went quiet. Victoria's expression flickered just briefly. "You can't know that." "I know enough," Alexander replied. "She has worked in this house for over a year. She is not a thief." Emily lowered her eyes before anyone could see what those words did to her. Relief rose in her chest, sharp and painful. For the first time that night, she felt seen. But then she remembered the gift. Minutes earlier, she had gone to the study to make sure it was still on Alexander's desk. It was gone. She found it later in the trash near the back hallway, crushed, torn open, the silver compass scratched across its face. To Emily, there had been only one explanation. Alexander had seen it, mocked it, and thrown it away like something dirty. So when she heard him defending her in front of the crowd, something inside her broke, not because she hated him, but because she had trusted him enough to be hurt by him. Emily walked into the center of the hall, holding the ruined gift box in one hand. Her eyes were wet, but her steps were firm. Alexander turned toward her, confused. "Emily?" She did not answer. The slap echoed against the marble walls. Gasps broke across the room. Alexander's face turned with the force of it. For a second, he looked stunned, almost human beneath all that control. Then anger darkened his eyes. "I trusted you," Emily whispered, her voice shaking. "And you threw it away." Alexander stared at the crushed box in her hand. "What are you talking about?" Before Emily could answer, Victoria rushed forward. "Oh my God, Emily, stop this. You're making it worse." She reached for Emily's arm as if to calm her, but her hand pushed instead. Emily stumbled. Something bright slipped from the fold of her uniform and struck the floor with a delicate, terrible sound. The diamond bracelet. For a moment, nobody moved. Emily looked down, horror draining the color from her face. "No," she whispered, "that's not mine. I don't know how that got there." Victoria covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes at exactly the right moment. "Alexander." The guests stepped back as if guilt were contagious. Mrs. Whitmore's face hardened. The servants stood frozen along the walls. Alexander bent, picked up the bracelet, and looked at Emily with a pain that quickly turned into fury. He had defended her. He had put his name between her and accusation. And now the evidence lay in his hand. "Alexander, please," Emily said. "Listen to me." But humiliation had already closed around him like a fist. "Get out," he said. Emily went still. "Alexander, get out of my house." The words landed harder than the slap. Emily looked at him as if waiting for the man who had defended her to return, but he was gone. In his place stood the billionaire everyone feared, cold, proud, and unwilling to be embarrassed twice in the same night. Security moved toward her. Emily clutched the ruined gift box to her chest and walked out before they could touch her. Outside, fireworks finally exploded over the mansion, painting the sky in red and gold. Inside, Victoria lowered her eyes to hide the smallest smile. And Alexander Whitmore stood in the middle of his Independence Day party, holding a diamond bracelet in one hand never realizing that the real thief was standing only a few feet away from him. While Alexander Whitmore still stood beneath the chandeliers with Victoria's bracelet in his hand, Emily Carter was already outside the mansion gates, walking into the cold night with the ruined gift pressed against her chest. Behind her, the Whitmore estate glowed like a palace. Music still floated through the open windows. Fireworks burst over the private gardens, in red, white, and gold, lighting up the sky as if the world had no idea something inside her had just been destroyed. Emily did not run at first. She walked because running would have made her look guilty, and even after everything, she refused to give those people one more reason to believe the lie. Her shoes clicked against the long stone driveway. Her uniform felt too tight around her throat. Her cheeks burned, not from the slap she had given Alexander, but from the shame of being watched, judged, and thrown away in front of strangers who never even knew her name. At the gate, one of the security guards avoided her eyes. He had seen her carry groceries in the rain. He had seen her stay late after charity dinners to clean spilled wine from the marble floor. He knew she was not the kind of woman who stole jewelry. But knowing and speaking were two different things in a house like Whitmore's. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, almost sorry. Emily looked at him once. "Don't." He opened the gate. She stepped out. The city beyond the estate was loud with celebration. Cars honked in the distance. Families laughed on sidewalks. Somewhere nearby, children shouted as fireworks cracked above rooftops. America was celebrating freedom, but Emily felt as if every door in her life had just locked at once. She walked until her legs began to shake, then stopped under a street lamp near the corner. Only there, away from the mansion and its perfect windows, did she finally look down at the gift in her hand. The box was crushed on one side. The blue ribbon had been torn loose. The silver compass inside had a scratch across the glass, thin but cruel, like a scar. Emily touched it with her thumb and swallowed the sound rising in her throat. She had spent 3 weeks restoring that compass. Not because she thought a billionaire needed another expensive object. Not because she believed a handmade gift could make her equal to the women who wore diamonds and spoke with confidence in rooms full of power. She had made it because Alexander had once said something he probably did not remember saying. It had been late in March. Rain had been striking the windows of his office, and Emily had entered quietly to clear the untouched dinner tray on his desk. Alexander had been standing by the bookshelves, holding an old photograph of his father. "My father used to keep a compass here," he had said. Not really to her, maybe just to the room. He said a man who loses direction loses everything. Emily had not answered. She knew when servants were expected to disappear, but she remembered. She remembered too much about him. The way he drank his coffee black when he was angry, but with 1 spoon of sugar when he was exhausted. The way he loosened his tie only after midnight, when no one important was left to impress. The way his face changed when he looked at old family photographs, as if all his wealth had never bought him one peaceful memory. Somewhere along the way, Emily had stopped seeing only the billionaire. She had started seeing the lonely man inside the mansion. That was her mistake. By the time she reached her apartment in Queens, the fireworks were still exploding. Her building was old, narrow, and brick-faced, with a front door that stuck when it rained, and stairs that smelled faintly of dust, laundry, soap, and someone's fried dinner. It was nothing like the Whitmore mansion. There were no marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, no polished silver trays, but it was hers. Emily climbed to the 3rd floor and unlocked the door with stiff fingers. Inside, the apartment was small. A faded couch sat near the window. A thrift store lamp gave the room a warm yellow glow. On the kitchen table were unopened bills, a half-finished cup of tea, and a framed photo of her mother smiling in a blue summer dress before sickness had made her smaller. Emily placed the broken compass on the table. Then she sat down and finally cried. Not loudly. Emily had learned young that loud crying did not fix rent, hospital bills, or empty refrigerators. Her tears came silently, falling down her cheeks while her shoulders shook with the kind of pain that had nowhere to go. She had been called a thief. She had been thrown out like trash. And the worst part was not Victoria's lie. Emily had known women like Victoria existed, Women who smiled with perfect teeth while hiding knives behind their backs. The worst part was Alexander. For one brief moment, he had stood between her and the world. He had said he believed her. Then one glittering lie had fallen to the floor, and his faith had vanished. At the mansion, the party continued, but the mood had changed. The guests still held champagne, still smiled when cameras passed, still pretended not to enjoy scandal too openly. But whispers moved faster than music. The maid actually slapped him. The bracelet fell right out of her uniform. Can you imagine? I always say you can never really know the help. Alexander heard pieces of it as he moved through the room, each sentence tightening something inside him. He wanted the party to end. He wanted every guest gone, every light turned off, every voice silenced. Victoria stayed close to him, playing her role with perfect restraint. She did not look triumphant. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she looked wounded, shaken, noble in her suffering. "I'm so sorry," she whispered when they were finally alone near the staircase. "I never wanted it to happen like that." Alexander did not answer. Victoria touched his arm. "You defended her, in front of everyone. You gave her your trust, and she humiliated you." His jaw tightened. "She must have been desperate," Victoria continued softly. "People do strange things when they want something they know they can never have." Alexander turned to her. "What does that mean?" Victoria lowered her eyes, as if she regretted the words. "Nothing. Forget I said it." But she knew he would not forget. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore approached moments later, her expression carved from ice. "The staff needs to be reviewed. All of them. This family cannot afford another embarrassment." "This family," Alexander said quietly, "has survived worse than gossip." Margaret's eyes narrowed. Gossip becomes reputation when enough important people repeat it. Alexander looked across the room where Emily had stood. He could still see her there, holding that ruined box, looking at him as if he had done something unforgivable. "I'll handle it," he said, but he had no idea how. Later, after the last guests left and the musicians packed away their instruments, the mansion became too quiet. Workers moved through the hall, clearing glasses, folding linens, erasing evidence of celebration. Near the front entrance, one of the maids bent to pick up a torn piece of blue ribbon from the floor, then paused when she realized what it was. Alexander saw it. "Leave it," he said. The maid froze. "Sir?" "I said leave it." She nodded and stepped away. Alexander picked up the ribbon himself. It was soft, cheap, and slightly wrinkled, not the kind of ribbon Victoria's world used. This was something bought carefully, maybe from a small shop, chosen by. He stood with it in his hand longer than he should have. In her apartment, Emily washed her face and changed out of the uniform. She folded it once, then threw it into the back of a chair because she could not bear to look at it neatly. That uniform had been her access to survival for more than a year. Now it felt like evidence from a crime she had not committed. Her phone buzzed. For one wild second, she thought it might be Alexander. It was not. It was Mrs. Alvarez from the cleaning agency that had placed her at the Whitmore mansion. Emily answered with a dry throat. "Emily," Mrs. Alvarez said, her voice heavy. "I received a call." Emily closed her eyes. "They said there was an incident." "I didn't steal anything." "I'm not saying you did, but they are." There was silence on the line. That silence told Emily everything. In their world, accusation traveled faster than truth. A rich woman's missing bracelet could ruin a poor woman's name before sunrise. "I'll try to find you something temporary," Mrs. Alvarez said, softer now. "But houses like that talk to each other. You know how it is." Yes, Emily knew. After the call ended, she sat by the window and watched the last fireworks fade over the city. The compass lay on the table beside her. She thought about throwing it away. Instead, she wrapped it carefully in a dish towel and placed it inside a drawer. She hated herself for still protecting it. Back at the mansion, Victoria finally returned to her guest suite. The moment the door closed, the sadness left her face. She stood in front of the mirror and removed her earrings slowly, one by one. Then she opened the small velvet case hidden at the bottom of her travel bag. Inside lay the real diamond bracelet, the one that had never been stolen. Victoria smiled at her reflection, but the smile did not last. She remembered Emily's face when the bracelet fell. Not fear exactly. Shock, yes. Pain, yes. But beneath it, something else. Something stubborn. Something that did not break the way it should have. That bothered Victoria. Emily Carter should have collapsed. She should have begged. She should have made herself look guilty by crying too loudly, speaking too fast, reaching for Alexander with desperate hands. Instead, she had walked out with her back straight. Victoria snapped the velvet case shut. "It's over," she whispered to herself. But the room did not believe her. In Alexander's bedroom, sleep would not come. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling while the house settled around him. He replayed the night in fragments. Victoria's missing bracelet, Emily's pale face, his own voice defending her, the slap, the ruined box, the bracelet falling, Emily begging him to listen. Something did not fit. The thought irritated him. Evidence was evidence. He had seen the bracelet fall with his own eyes. He had held it in his hand. The entire room had seen it. And yet Emily's face would not leave him. Guilty people usually looked afraid of being caught. Emily had looked betrayed. Alexander turned on the lamp and sat up. On the nightstand, the torn blue ribbon rested where he had placed it, without knowing why. He picked it up again. "I trusted you," she had said. Not "I'm innocent." Not "please believe me." "I trusted you." Those words felt less like a defense and more like an accusation. Down the hallway, Victoria slept peacefully, or pretended to. In her locked travel case, the real bracelet waited in darkness. In a trash bag near the service corridor, the ruined wrapping from Emily's gift had not yet been taken away. And somewhere inside Alexander's private office, beneath the edge of his desk where no one would think to look, a single pearl button from Victoria's blouse lay on the floor. It had fallen when she entered the room she was never supposed to enter. She did not notice it missing. Not yet. And by morning, that tiny forgotten button would become the first crack in her perfect lie. By morning, the Whitmore mansion looked clean again. The champagne glasses were gone. The flags still hung from the marble walls, but the music had stopped, the guests had left, and the grand hall no longer carried the glittering noise of celebration. What remained was silence, polished floors, and a secret lying in a room where it did not belong. Alexander Whitmore had not slept. He came downstairs before 7, already dressed for work, though his face looked sharper than usual from a night of restless thoughts. The house staff moved carefully around him, speaking only when necessary. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone had seen Emily Carter leave with tears in her eyes, and a stolen bracelet supposedly falling from her uniform. No one dared mention her name. Alexander walked into his private office and closed the door behind him. It was the one room in the mansion that had always belonged only to him. Even during parties, even when the house was full of important people, no guest was allowed inside. His office held contracts, private family papers, investment files, and things he trusted no one else to touch. No one except Emily. She had cleaned that room for over a year, quietly, carefully, without ever moving anything out of place. Alexander used to believe that was just professionalism. Now, remembering the ruined gift box in her trembling hand, he wondered if he had mistaken care for duty. He tried to work. A land acquisition file waited on his desk. A construction proposal needed approval before noon. 3 calls from board members already flashed on his phone, but the words blurred each time he looked at them. He kept seeing Emily's face. Not when she slapped him, not even when the bracelet fell. He saw her at the gate, walking away without begging. That was what bothered him most. A guilty woman might panic. She might lie quickly. She might cry and reach for sympathy. But Emily had looked wounded in a deeper way, as if the worst part was not being accused, but being disbelieved by him. Alexander pushed himself away from the desk too quickly. The stack of documents near his elbow slid off the edge and scattered across the floor. "Damn it," he muttered. He bent down to gather the papers. That was when he saw it. A small pearl button lay half-hidden beneath the right leg of his desk, caught between the rug and the shadow. It was not plain. It was not cheap. It had a gold rim, a smooth white center, and the delicate shine of something sewn onto a designer blouse. Alexander picked it up. For several seconds, he simply stared at it. Emily's uniform had black buttons. Small, simple, plastic. This button belonged to a woman who wore silk. His mind moved back to the night before. Victoria had worn a cream blouse earlier in the day before changing into her red gown. He remembered it clearly because she had walked through the hall giving orders to the catering staff, one hand on her phone, the other adjusting that expensive blouse at the collar. A pearl button. Alexander stood slowly. Victoria had no reason to be in this office. She knew the rule. Everyone did. Even his mother knocked before entering. So how had a button from Victoria's clothing ended up under his desk? He opened the office door and called for Daniel Brooks. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later, still in his navy suit from an early meeting, carrying a tablet and the cautious expression of a man who knew his employer was not asking ordinary questions. "You wanted to see me?" Alexander placed the button on the desk between them. Daniel looked at it, then back at Alexander. "Where did you find that?" "On my desk." Daniel said nothing. Alexander's voice stayed calm, but there was something dangerous beneath it. "Pull the camera footage from yesterday. Hallway outside this office. Service corridor. Back entrance. Everything from 4 to 8. Daniel hesitated. "Do you want security involved?" "No, not yet." That answer told Daniel enough. While Daniel worked, Alexander opened the trash bin near the service hallway himself. He had never done anything like that in his life. The smell of flowers, torn paper, and leftover party waste rose sharply as he searched through the bag with a pair of leather gloves. Then he found it. Blue wrapping paper, torn, a crushed gift box, a piece of handwritten card. Alexander took it out carefully and unfolded the note. For a long moment, the room seemed to shrink around him. The handwriting was small, neat, and unmistakably Emily's. "I know this is not much, but I remembered what you said about your father's compass. I thought maybe every man deserves to find his direction again. Happy Independence Day, Mr. Whitmore, Emily." Alexander read it twice, then a third time. The anger he had been holding since the night before changed shape. It did not disappear. It turned inward. Emily had not brought him some childish confession. She had brought him a memory, a quiet piece of kindness. Something she had made with her own hands because she had listened to a sentence he barely remembered speaking. And someone had destroyed it before he ever saw it. Daniel returned just as Alexander folded the note. "There's a problem," Daniel said. Alexander looked up. "What kind of problem?" "The hallway camera outside your office went dark yesterday for 11 minutes. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "When?" 6:40, 2 to 6:53. That was less than an hour before Victoria claimed her bracelet was missing. "Technical failure?" Alexander asked. Daniel's expression gave the answer before his words did. "The system log shows a manual interruption from the internal security panel." "Who accessed it?" "I'm checking. But there's more." Daniel swiped the tablet and turned it toward him. The service entrance camera stayed active. It caught part of the side hallway reflection in the glass cabinet. The image was grainy, warped by the reflection, but clear enough. A woman in a cream blouse entered the restricted hallway. Victoria. She carried something small in her hand. Alexander watched the footage, without blinking. A few minutes later, the same reflection showed Victoria leaving. Her blouse sleeve caught briefly on the office door frame. She looked down, fixed it quickly, and walked away. Alexander lowered the tablet. The missing button sat on his desk like a quiet witness. "What about the bracelet?" he asked. Daniel tapped the screen again. "I made a few calls. Victoria purchased 2 nearly identical bracelets 6 weeks ago. One custom diamond piece from a private jeweler, one replica through an estate dealer in Boston." Alexander's jaw tightened. "She never lost the real one," Daniel continued. "At least, not if the jeweler's insurance photo matches the bracelet she was wearing in a private dinner photo 3 days ago." The room went silent. Alexander turned toward the window. Outside, the lawn crews were taking down the Independence Day decorations. Red, white, and blue ribbons came off the iron fence one by one. The house was being cleaned, but the lie was not. For the first time since Emily had walked out, Alexander allowed himself to say what he had been afraid to think. She was framed. Daniel did not answer. He did not need to. Alexander looked back at the destroyed gift, the note, the pearl button, and the paused image of Victoria in the hallway. The truth was still incomplete, but its shape was already visible. He had thrown an innocent woman out of his house. Worse than that, he had done it after she begged him to listen. Alexander picked up his phone, then stopped. What could he possibly say? Sorry was too small. An explanation would sound like an excuse. And Emily, if she had any pride left after what he had done to her, would probably never take his call. But he had to try. Find out where she is, he told Daniel, and do it quietly. Daniel nodded. What do you want me to tell her? Alexander looked at Emily's ruined gift. Tell her I know I was wrong, he said, and tell her I need to see her before Victoria realizes I found the first piece of the truth. But Alexander did not know that Victoria had already noticed the missing button on her blouse. And by the time he reached for Emily, Victoria was already preparing her next lie. The pearl button on Alexander Whitmore's desk was small enough to be mistaken for nothing, but to him, it felt heavier than the diamond bracelet he had held the night before. It sat beneath the morning light, like a quiet accusation. Only hours earlier, he had believed what everyone in the Grand Hall believed, that Emily Carter had stolen Victoria Hayes's bracelet, slapped him in front of his guests, and betrayed the one person who had dared to defend her. But now, inside the private office where no guest was supposed to enter, a button from Victoria's blouse had opened a door he could no longer close. Alexander stood behind his desk, staring at the ruined gift box recovered from the trash. The blue wrapping paper was torn. The ribbon was crushed. Inside lay a small silver compass with a cracked glass face. It was not expensive, not rare, not the kind of thing anyone in his world would notice twice. That was what made it hurt. Emily had not tried to impress him. She had tried to understand him. He unfolded the note found inside the box. I know this is not much, but I remembered what you said about your father's compass. I thought maybe every man deserves to find his direction again. Happy Independence Day, Mr. Whitmore. Emily. Alexander read the words once, then again. Months ago, on a rainy night, he had spoken without thinking while Emily cleared a cold dinner tray from his office. He had said his father used to keep a compass on the desk and believed a man who lost direction could lose everything. Emily had not answered. She had simply lowered her eyes and left the room. But she had remembered, and he had never even seen the gift before someone destroyed it. A knock came at the door. Daniel Brooks entered with a tablet under one arm and a folder in his hand. His face told Alexander the news before he spoke. What did you find? Alexander asked. Daniel placed the folder on the desk. Enough to know last night was not a misunderstanding. Alexander did not sit. Daniel continued. I spoke with Nora from the kitchen. She saw Victoria near the service pantry before the party. Victoria asked about a small gift box with a blue ribbon. Nora told her it belonged to Emily. Alexander's eyes moved to the broken compass. What happened next? Victoria took it, Daniel said. Nora heard her say, Mr. Whitmore doesn't need charity gifts from staff. A few minutes later, another employee saw Victoria near the back hallway, close to the trash bins. The office went still. Alexander understood the cruelty immediately. Victoria had not only planted a bracelet, she had first broken Emily's heart so Emily would react in front of everyone. The slap had not come from guilt. It had come from pain. Pain Victoria had designed. Daniel tapped the tablet. There's more. The camera outside your office went dark from 6:42 to 6:53 yesterday evening. Manual interruption from the internal security panel. Who used the code? The code belonged to your mother. Alexander's face hardened. But Mrs. Whitmore was in the South Garden at that time, Daniel added quickly. Multiple witnesses confirm it. Someone else must have seen her use the code earlier. Victoria had spent days helping Margaret Whitmore arrange the Independence Day celebration. Flowers, seating charts, catering schedules, guest flow, security access. Alexander had thought she was eager to belong in the household. Now he realized she had been studying it. Daniel turned the tablet toward him. The main hallway camera went dark, but the service entrance camera caught a reflection in the glass cabinet. The footage was grainy, bent by the reflection, but clear enough. A woman in a cream blouse entered the restricted hallway, carrying something small. Minutes later, she walked out. Her sleeve caught on the office door frame. She looked down, fixed it quickly, and kept walking. Alexander looked at the pearl button on his desk. There was no room left for coincidence. "She was in my office," he said. "Yes, and she destroyed Emily's gift before I ever saw it. That is what the evidence shows." Alexander's jaw tightened. "The bracelet?" Daniel opened the folder. Victoria bought the original diamond bracelet 8 months ago from a private jeweler in Manhattan. 6 weeks ago, she bought a near-identical replica through an estate dealer in Boston. Same design, cheaper stones, lighter clasp. Alexander took the photos Daniel handed him. One showed Victoria wearing the real bracelet at a charity dinner 3 days before the party. The second showed the bracelet that had fallen from Emily's uniform on the marble floor. "Different clasp," Daniel said. Alexander lowered the photographs. "She never lost anything." "No." Outside the office window, workers were removing the last Independence Day decorations from the mansion. Red, white, and blue ribbons came down from the iron fence. White chairs were stacked on the lawn. The estate was being returned to perfection. But inside Alexander, nothing was clean. In Queens, Emily Carter spent the same morning learning how quickly a rich woman's lie could travel. She had washed her face twice, changed into jeans and a gray sweater, and printed 3 copies of her resume at a corner shop. By 9, she was sitting across from a manager at a domestic staffing agency in Manhattan. The woman smiled politely, but she did not reach for Emily's resume. "We'll keep your file on record," she said. Emily looked at the paper lying untouched between them. "You haven't read it." The woman's smile faded. "The Whitmore household called last night." Emily's throat tightened. "Then you already decided." "There was an incident. There was a lie." The woman looked away. "Private clients are cautious. A name like Whitmore carries weight." Emily stood with what dignity she had left. "So does the truth. People just don't pay attention when it comes from someone like me." At the second agency, the manager was suddenly unavailable. At the third, an older woman, with tired eyes, told her the same thing more honestly. "No one will place you in a private home while your name is attached to a theft accusation." "I didn't steal anything. I'm sorry." Emily almost laughed. Everyone was sorry. No one was brave. Outside, she sat near the subway entrance with her resumes in her lap. New York moved around her without slowing down. People carried coffee, shouted into phones, rushed across the street, lived their ordinary lives. Nobody knew that hers had been broken by a bracelet she had never touched. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring until it stopped. A text appeared a few seconds later. "Miss Carter, this is Daniel Brooks. Mr. Whitmore knows the bracelet was planted. He knows your gift was destroyed. He wants to apologize in person." Emily read the message twice. "He knows." The words should have brought relief, but they cut deeper than silence. He knew now, after the damage, after the guests had stared at her like a criminal, after security had moved toward her, after agencies had started treating her name like a warning label. He had not known when she begged him to listen. She locked the phone and put it in her bag. At the mansion, Daniel looked at his screen. She read it. She didn't answer. Alexander nodded. "I wouldn't answer me either." Daniel studied him. "There may be one more piece of proof." "What kind?" "Audio. The smart doorbell near the West Service entrance isn't tied to the main security system. It records when sound rises near the corridor. Victoria may not have known it was active. Play it." Daniel pressed the screen. For a few seconds, there was only background noise. Dishes, footsteps, distant strings tuning for the party. Then Victoria's voice came through, low but clear. She'll run to him with her little gift first. Let her. When she finds it in the trash, she'll be emotional. Emotional people make mistakes. A male voice answered. "And the bracelet?" "Already handled," Victoria said. "I just need it to fall where everyone can see. Once Alexander feels humiliated, he won't listen to a word she says." Then came a soft laugh. "That girl's problem is she thinks kindness means she matters." Daniel stopped the recording. Alexander did not move. That sentence entered him like ice. Victoria had not only wanted Emily removed from the house, she had wanted her reduced. shamed, punished for daring to believe kindness gave her any place in Alexander's world. And worst of all, Victoria had been right about him. Once Alexander feels humiliated, he won't listen. Last night, he had proven her right. "Do you want to confront Victoria?" Daniel asked. "No," Alexander said. Daniel looked surprised. "If I confront her now, she'll cry, deny, twist the story, and make herself the victim. I want the truth locked down so tightly she can't perform her way out of it." Daniel nodded. "Then what?" Alexander picked up Emily's note. "I call Emily myself." That evening, before he could make the call, Victoria came to his office. She wore a pale blue dress and the soft expression of a woman pretending to be concerned. The missing button on her blouse had already been replaced, but Alexander noticed the slight difference. He noticed everything now. "You've been distant all day," she said. "I had work. After last night, I understand." She stepped closer. "You trusted the wrong person. That hurts." Alexander looked at her. "Does it?" Victoria sat across from him. "Emily humiliated you after you defended her. Girls like that can misunderstand kindness. Maybe she wanted attention. Maybe that gift she carried was part of it." His eyes sharpened. "What gift?" Victoria paused half a second too long. "The box everyone saw," she said carefully. "What do you think was inside?" "How would I know?" "A compass." Victoria blinked. "A compass?" "Yes. For a maid to give a billionaire a compass?" She gave a quiet laugh, then softened it quickly. "Alexander, that sounds like someone trying to get close to you." He watched her face. Once, he might have mistaken her tone for concern. Now he could hear the contempt hiding beneath every polished word. "She remembered something I said about my father," he said. "That's exactly my point. She used something personal. Or she listened." Victoria's eyes cooled. "You feel guilty," she said. "Be careful. Guilt makes men stupid." Alexander leaned back. So does pride. For the first time, Victoria did not answer immediately. Then she smiled, stood, and walked to the door. "You're exhausted. We'll talk when you're thinking clearly." When she left, Alexander waited until her footsteps disappeared. Then he called Emily. In Queens, Emily sat at her kitchen table with the broken compass wrapped in a dish towel beside her. When Alexander's name appeared on the screen, she stared until the ringing almost stopped. Then she answered, "You have 1 minute." "I know Victoria destroyed your gift," Alexander said. "I know she planted the bracelet. I know it was a replica. I found the button from her blouse in my office, and there is an audio recording of her planning it." Emily closed her eyes. "You know now," she said. "Yes, but you didn't know when I stood in front of you." "No, you didn't know when I begged you to listen." "No, you threw me out like I was nothing." Alexander's silence was heavy. "I was wrong," he said, "and I am sorry. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that, but you deserve to hear the truth from me." Emily looked at the wrapped compass. "Sorry is too small. I know. What do you want?" "To meet tomorrow morning at the mansion. I will show you every piece of evidence. After that, if you never want to see me again, I will not stop you." Emily almost said no. That house had taken her name, her job, and her dignity in one night. But maybe that was exactly why she had to go back. Not as a servant, not as a thief. As a woman who had been wronged and had the right to stand where she had been shamed. "I'm not coming back as your maid," she said. "I would never ask that. I'm not coming for your guilt. I understand. I'm coming for my name." Alexander exhaled softly. "Then I'll be waiting." The call ended. Emily sat in silence for a long time, her hands still around the phone. The pain had not disappeared, but something inside it had changed. The truth had finally found a voice. Tomorrow, she would make it stand in the house that had tried to bury her. But upstairs in the Whitmore mansion, Victoria Hayes stood behind the half-open door of the east sitting room. She had not heard everything, but she had heard enough. Emily was coming back, not as a maid, not as a thief, as someone Alexander wanted to face. Victoria's hand tightened around her wineglass. Guilt could turn into protection. Protection could turn into tenderness. Tenderness could become love. She would not allow that. Victoria returned to her suite, locked the door, and pulled a second phone from the hidden pocket of her travel bag. Tomorrow, 10. She is coming back. Be ready. The reply came quickly. How far? Victoria stared at her reflection in the dark window and typed, far enough that Alexander stopped seeing her as innocent. Then she deleted the thread and smiled. Downstairs, Alexander placed the evidence into the wall safe. The pearl button, the photos, the bracelet receipts, the audio backup, Emily's note, and the broken compass. Tomorrow, Emily would return. Tomorrow, he would try to give back the truth he should have protected from the beginning. But above him, Victoria was already preparing the next scene. Because inside the Whitmore mansion, truth did not win simply because it existed. It had to survive the people willing to bury it. By the time morning came, the Whitmore mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage waiting for the next disaster. Downstairs, Alexander Whitmore stood alone in his private office, looking at the evidence arranged across his desk. The pearl button, the photo of Victoria in the hallway, the receipt for the replica bracelet, the audio file, Emily's note, and the broken compass. Every piece told the same story. Emily Carter had been innocent. Victoria Hayes had planned everything, and Alexander had helped the lie succeed by refusing to listen when it mattered most. At 10 o'clock, Emily would return, not as his employee, not as the quiet maid who once moved through the mansion carrying trays and secrets in her tired eyes. She was coming back for her name, and Alexander knew that if he failed her again, no apology would ever be enough. He placed the broken compass carefully in the center of the desk. Beside it, he set Emily's handwritten note. He wanted her to see that he had kept it. He wanted her to know the gift had not been meaningless to him, even if he had discovered its meaning too late. Daniel Brooks stood near the door, checking his phone. Security knows to let her in? Alexander asked. Yes. No questions, no delay. And Victoria? Daniel looked up. She has not left her suite. That does not mean she is not moving. No, Daniel said. It does not. Alexander turned toward the window. Outside, the morning looked ordinary. Sunlight washed over the lawn. Workers trimmed hedges near the driveway. The American flags from Independence Day had been removed, but faint marks remained where the decorations had hung. Like the house itself was trying to pretend nothing had happened. Alexander could not pretend. He still heard Emily's voice from the phone. Sorry is too small. She was right. Before he could answer Daniel, footsteps approached the hallway. A second later, Victoria appeared at the office door in a white dress, looking pale, elegant, and wounded. She did not knock. Alexander's expression hardened. This is not a good time. Victoria stepped inside anyway. That is exactly what you said last night. Daniel moved slightly, as if ready to intervene. Alexander did not look away from Victoria. Leave us. Daniel hesitated. Now, Alexander said. Daniel left, but not before giving Alexander a warning look. Victoria closed the door behind him. You are avoiding me. I am busy. With Emily? The name changed the air in the room. Alexander's eyes narrowed. How do you know she is coming? Victoria smiled faintly, but it did not reach her eyes. This is still your house, Alexander. People talk. No, you listen. Her smile faded. Alexander walked to the desk and picked up the pearl button between two fingers. You lost something in my office. For the first time, Victoria's face went still. Only for a heartbeat. Then she gave a soft laugh. A button? Is that what this is about? This button came from your blouse. It was under my desk. I have been in this house for months. Buttons fall. Not in rooms you are forbidden to enter. Victoria looked at him as if he had slapped her. Forbidden? Is that what I am to you now? A stranger? You entered my office. You took Emily's gift. You destroyed it. Then you planted a fake bracelet on her. Her eyes sharpened. So he knew. Not everything, perhaps, but enough. Victoria shifted immediately. The hurt vanished, replaced by tears gathering with perfect timing. I made a mistake, she whispered. I was scared. Alexander stared at her. Scared of what? Of losing you. That is not an excuse. No, but it is the truth. She stepped closer. You do not understand what it felt like watching you look at her. She was supposed to be staff, Alexander, but you said her name like she mattered. Alexander's voice dropped. She does matter. Victoria flinched, as if he had struck her harder than any accusation. At that exact moment, a car stopped at the front of the mansion. Emily had arrived. She stepped through the front entrance wearing a simple navy dress and flat shoes, her hair tied back, her face pale but controlled. The guards let her pass without a word. The same grand hall where she had been shamed now stood quiet, empty of guests, but not empty of memory. Every step brought back the night before. The chandeliers, the marble floor, the eyes, the bracelet hitting the ground, Alexander's voice telling her to get out. Emily stopped for a second in the center of the hall, her hand tightening around the strap of her bag. She almost turned back. Then she remembered why she had come. Not for Alexander, for her name. She moved toward the office. Inside, Victoria heard her footsteps. And just like that, the tears disappeared. She looked at Alexander, then at the door, and in that brief second, she made her decision. Before Alexander could stop her, Victoria threw herself into his arms. It was not a gentle embrace. It was a trap with arms. "Please," she cried loudly, holding him tight. "Don't leave me because of her. I love you. I only did it because I love you." Alexander grabbed her shoulders, trying to push her away. "Victoria, stop." But Emily had already reached the doorway. From where she stood, she did not see Alexander's hands forcing Victoria back. She saw only Victoria pressed against him, her face buried against his chest, her white dress bright against his dark suit. She heard the words, "I love you," hanging in the air like another insult. For one moment, Emily could not breathe. Alexander turned and saw her. "Emily." The sound of her name and his voice almost broke her, but she would not let it. Victoria turned too, still close enough to Alexander to make the scene look exactly the way she wanted. Her eyes were wet, but beneath the tears was a cruel little glint Emily recognized at once. Emily looked from Victoria to Alexander. Then she gave a small, bitter smile. "So this was the apology?" Alexander stepped forward. "No. Emily, listen to me." She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You called me back here for this?" "No." "Was this supposed to teach me my place again?" Alexander's face tightened with pain. "That is not what happened. It is always what happens in this house." Her voice shook now, but she kept standing straight. "You people break someone, then invite them back to explain why they should be grateful the damage was not worse." Victoria lowered her eyes like a victim. "Emily, please don't make a scene." Emily looked at her. "You don't get to say my name." The words landed sharp and clean. Alexander moved toward Emily, but she stepped back. "I came here for the truth," she said. "But I should have known better. Men like you do not call women like me back to repair what they broke. You call us back to prove you still can." "Emily, I swear to you, I was pushing her away." She shook her head. "I have already been fooled by what things looked like in this house. I will not let it happen twice." Then she turned and walked away. Alexander shoved Victoria's hands off him. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Victoria's face hardened. "I am fighting for what is mine. I am not yours." He did not wait for her answer. He ran after Emily. She was already crossing the grand hall, tears blurring her vision, though she refused to wipe them away. The house seemed to stretch in front of her, too long, too bright, too cruel. She reached the front steps and pushed through the door into the morning air. "Emily," Alexander called behind her. She did not stop. The driveway curved toward the iron gates. Beyond them, the road ran along the edge of the estate, busy even in the late morning. Emily walked fast, then faster. Her chest hurt with each breath. How could she have been so stupid? She had almost believed him. On the phone, when he admitted he was wrong, when he said she deserved the truth, she had heard something honest in his voice. She had allowed herself one dangerous thought. Maybe Alexander Whitmore was not like the others. Then she saw Victoria in his arms. Maybe the truth was simpler. Maybe men like Alexander could feel guilty for a moment and still choose the woman who belonged in their world. "Emily, stop!" Alexander shouted. She reached the gate and stepped onto the road without looking. A horn screamed. Emily turned her head too late. A black SUV was coming fast around the curve, its tires hissing against the pavement. For one frozen second, she saw the driver's face, the windshield glare, the impossible short distance between her body and the car. Then Alexander hit her from the side. He wrapped one arm around her waist and threw both of them toward the edge of the road. The SUV blasted past, so close the wind of it tore through Emily's hair. They crashed hard onto the stone border near the gate. Alexander took the impact with his shoulder. A sharp, broken sound escaped him. Emily landed half on top of him, stunned, breathless, alive. For a moment, all she could hear was the SUV speeding away and Alexander's labored breathing beneath her. Then she saw the blood. It spread dark through the shoulder of his white shirt, just below his jacket. His face was pale, his jaw clenched against pain. "Alexander," she whispered. His eyes opened, even hurt, even bleeding. The first thing he did was look at her. "Are you hurt?" Emily stared at him. He had just thrown himself in front of a moving car, and he was asking about her. "Your shoulder," she said, voice breaking. "It's fine." "It is not fine." Footsteps pounded behind them. Daniel reached them first, then two guards, then a terrified housekeeper. Victoria appeared at the top of the steps, one hand against her mouth, her face arranged into shock, but this time, nobody was looking at her. Everyone was looking at Alexander bleeding on the ground with Emily beside him. Daniel crouched down. "Sir, don't move." Alexander ignored him and reached for Emily's hand. His fingers were cold. "Listen to me," he said through the pain. "I was pushing her away." Emily's lips trembled. "I know what I saw." "No." His grip tightened weakly. "You saw what she wanted you to see." Those words stopped her. They were too close to what had happened the night before. Too close to the bracelet, too close to the gift, too close to the trap. Emily turned her head slowly toward the mansion. Victoria stood motionless in the doorway. For the first time, Emily wondered if the scene in the office had been another trap. Alexander winced as Daniel pressed a cloth against his shoulder. "She knew you were coming," he said. "She heard enough. She tried to make you leave before I could show you the proof." Emily looked back at him, torn between anger and fear and something she did not want to name. "Why should I believe you?" Alexander swallowed hard. "Because I did not believe you when I should have, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." The ambulance siren sounded in the distance. Emily looked at his hand holding hers. Yesterday, that hand had held a bracelet and judged her. Today, it had pulled her out of death's path. The pain in her chest shifted, not gone, but no longer the same. Daniel looked at Emily. "Miss Carter, the evidence is real. The recording, the button, the replica bracelet. Everything Mr. Whitmore told you is true." Victoria suddenly stepped closer. "Alexander, you're hurt. Let me—" "Stay away from me," Alexander said. The words were weak, but final. Victoria stopped. Emily heard the difference. So did everyone else. The ambulance arrived moments later. Paramedics moved quickly, checking Alexander's shoulder, asking questions, preparing to take him in. He refused to release Emily's hand until she leaned closer. "I'm not leaving," she said softly. Only then did his fingers loosen. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Alexander looked at her one more time. "I was wrong," he said, "but I am done being blind." Emily stood beside the gate, shaken and silent, as the ambulance doors closed. Behind her, the Whitmore mansion rose in the sunlight, beautiful and merciless. Inside that house, the truth was waiting. So was Victoria. And Emily finally understood that if she wanted her name back, she would have to do more than hear Alexander's apology. She would have to walk back into the house that broke her and face the woman who was not finished trying to destroy her. The ambulance doors had barely closed before Emily Carter realized she was still holding the torn strap of her bag like it was the only thing keeping her standing. A few minutes earlier, she had been running from the Whitmore mansion with tears in her eyes, convinced Alexander had called her back only to hurt her again. Then a black SUV came around the curve too fast. The horn screamed, and Alexander threw himself between her and the impact. Now the road was quiet again. Too quiet. The mansion stood behind her, bright and perfect beneath the morning sun, as if nothing terrible had happened at its gates. But Emily could still see Alexander on the ground, blood spreading through his white shirt, his face pale with pain, asking if she was hurt, before he asked anything about himself. Daniel Brooks stepped beside her. "Miss Carter." Emily turned slowly. Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes were serious. "He is being taken to a private medical center. The shoulder injury looks bad, but the paramedics said he was conscious and stable." Emily nodded, though the words barely reached her. Victoria Hayes stood near the front steps, still wearing the same white dress, one hand pressed against her chest in a performance of shock. But this time, Emily did not see a frightened woman. She saw the timing, the office embrace, the sudden tears, the way Victoria had appeared exactly where she needed to be, exactly when Emily arrived. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Daniel asked quietly. Emily looked at him. The hug? The trap. That word landed heavily. Trap. It explained too much. The ruined gift, the bracelet, the embrace, the SUV arriving so fast outside the gate. Emily's eyes moved toward the road. Daniel followed her gaze. "We are checking the security cameras near the gate. I don't know if the car was connected to Victoria, but after what she has already done, I am not dismissing anything." Emily wrapped her arms around herself. "I almost died, and he almost died stopping it." She looked toward the road again. Her anger had not disappeared, but something had changed. Yesterday, Alexander had wounded her with disbelief. Today, he had bled because he refused to let the lie take one more thing from her. Daniel opened his folder and took out a slim tablet. "Alexander wanted you to see this even before the accident." Emily hesitated. "I know you don't owe him anything," Daniel said, "but you came for your name. This is where it starts." He played the recording. Victoria's voice came through low and clear. "She'll run to him with her little gift first. Let her. When she finds it in the trash, she'll be emotional. Emotional people make mistakes." Emily stopped breathing. A male voice asked about the bracelet. "Already handled," Victoria said. "I just need it to fall where everyone can see. Once Alexander feels humiliated, he won't listen to a word she says." Then the laugh. "That girl's problem is, she thinks kindness means she matters." Emily's face went still. For a long moment, she did not cry. She did not speak. She simply stood there, hearing her humiliation described like a strategy. Her heartbreak had not been an accident. Her shame had been scheduled. Daniel showed her the footage next. Victoria entering Alexander's office, the sleeve catching on the doorframe, the pearl button found beneath the desk, then the receipts for the original bracelet and the replica, then Nora's written statement about the gift box. Every piece was a small blade, but together they cut through the lie. Emily looked toward Victoria. Victoria had stopped pretending to be shocked. Her eyes locked with Emily's across the driveway, cold and sharp. Emily did not look away. "Where is the compass?" Emily asked. "In Alexander's office safe," Daniel said. "He kept it with your note." Emily swallowed. That hurt too, but differently. At the medical center, Alexander refused a sedative until Daniel arrived with Emily. The doctor had cleaned and bandaged the deep wound near his shoulder. Nothing was broken, but the impact had torn skin and muscle badly enough that moving would be painful for weeks. His jacket had been cut away. His white shirt was stained and ruined. For the first time since Emily had known him, Alexander Whitmore looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who could break. Emily stood near the doorway. Alexander saw her and tried to sit up. "Don't," she said. He stopped immediately. Daniel remained outside, closing the door behind her. For several seconds, the room held only the sound of medical machines and distant footsteps in the hallway. Alexander spoke first. "Are you hurt?" Emily shook her head. "You already asked me that." I needed to hear the answer again. Her eyes moved to his bandaged shoulder. "You could have been killed. So could you. You didn't think." "No," he admitted. "For once I didn't." That honesty made her look away. Alexander's voice softened. "Emily, what you saw in the office was not what it looked like. Victoria threw herself at me because she knew you were coming. I was pushing her away." "I know now," Emily said. He closed his eyes briefly, relief and pain crossing his face at the same time. "Daniel showed me the recording," she continued. "The button, the bracelet, everything." Alexander opened his eyes again. "Then you know you were innocent." I always knew that. The sentence struck him harder than she intended. He nodded slowly. You're right. Emily stepped closer, but kept distance between them. What I needed was not proof for myself. I needed one person in that room to believe me before the proof appeared. Alexander looked at her without defense. I failed you. Yes. I let pride make the decision. Yes. I saw what Victoria wanted me to see. Emily's voice grew quieter. And you saw me the way everyone else saw me. A maid. A poor girl. Someone who could be guilty because people like me are always easier to doubt. Alexander's jaw tightened, not in anger at her, but at himself. I do not know how to undo that. You can't. The words were simple, and because they were simple, they were final. He accepted them. No, he said, I can't, but I can tell the truth where I told the lie. Publicly, clearly, without excuses. Emily searched his face. What does that mean? It means everyone who saw you humiliated will hear that you were innocent. The staff, my mother, the guests who mattered enough to spread the rumor, the agencies that refused to place you. My lawyers will send formal notices by tonight. Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. You think a letter fixes my name? No, but silence would damage it more. She looked down at her hands. They were still shaking. Alexander continued. I want you to decide how far this goes. Police report, civil claim, public statement, lawsuit. You choose. I will cooperate with all of it. And Victoria? His face hardened. She is done in my life. That is not the same as accountability. I know. For the first time, Emily heard something in his voice that was not guilt. It was resolve. Later that afternoon, Alexander returned to the mansion against medical advice. He walked slowly, one arm in a sling, his face pale but controlled. Daniel stayed at his side. Emily followed a few steps behind them, not as staff, not as a guest, but as the woman whose truth had brought them all back into that hall. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore waited near the staircase. Her face tightened when she saw Emily. Alexander, she said, you should be resting. I will rest after this is handled. Margaret glanced at Emily. Must she be here? Alexander stopped. His voice was low, but every person in the hall heard it. Yes, she must. The staff had gathered quietly along the walls. Nora, Teresa, the security guards, the housekeeper, people who had witnessed Emily's disgrace, now stood in the same room where it happened. Victoria was brought in last. She had changed clothes, fixed her hair, and returned to her wounded expression. But when she saw Alexander standing beside Emily, something in her face hardened. Alexander turned to the room. Last night, he said, I accused Emily Carter by my actions, even if not by my words. I allowed her to be treated as a thief. I ordered her out of this house while she was innocent. No one moved. Emily stood very still. Alexander continued. The bracelet that fell from her uniform was planted. It was a replica. Victoria Hayes purchased it weeks ago and arranged for it to be found on Emily. She also destroyed a gift Emily had left for me, knowing it would hurt her enough to make her react publicly. Victoria stepped forward. Alexander, you are injured and emotional. He did not look at her. Daniel played the audio. Victoria's voice filled the grand hall. Once Alexander feels humiliated, he won't listen to a word she says. That girl's problem is, she thinks kindness means she matters. The staff listened in stunned silence. Margaret's face lost color. Nora began to cry quietly. When the recording ended, nobody spoke. Alexander looked at Victoria then. You were right about one thing. I did not listen. That is my shame. But your lie is over. Victoria's eyes flashed. You are throwing away your reputation for a maid? Emily felt the word hit the room. Alexander answered immediately. No. I'm trying to recover my integrity because I failed a woman who deserved better. For once, Victoria had no perfect response. Margaret stepped forward, shaken but proud enough to hide it badly. This should not be discussed in front of the staff. Alexander turned to his mother. The staff saw Emily humiliated. They will see her cleared. Margaret's mouth tightened. Then, after a long silence, she looked at Emily. I misjudged you, she said. It was not warm. It was not enough. but it was public. Emily nodded once. Yes, you did. A few servants lowered their eyes, hiding small smiles. Alexander faced the room again. As of now, any statement made against Emily Carter regarding theft is false. If any person in this house repeats that lie, my legal team will respond. The agencies that received false information will be contacted today. Emily will receive written confirmation of her innocence, signed by me. Victoria laughed bitterly. And what about me? Alexander finally looked at her fully. You will leave this house today. My attorneys will contact yours. The evidence has already been secured. Her face changed then. Not fear exactly. Something colder. A promise. You think this makes her one of you? Victoria said. She will always be what she was when she walked in here. Emily stepped forward before Alexander could answer. No, she said. I am not what I was when I walked in here. I am what I chose to remain after you tried to break me. The hall went silent again. Victoria stared at her, hatred naked now. Emily did not flinch. By evening, the formal notices were sent. The agencies received calls from Whitmore Legal Counsel. The household staff signed statements. The replica bracelet was placed into evidence. The audio file was copied and secured. Emily stood alone in the grand hall after everyone left. The room looked different without guests. No champagne, no music, no red, white, and blue lights. Just marble, silence, and the memory of the night her life had cracked open. Alexander approached slowly, one hand holding the repaired gift box Daniel had retrieved. I know this does not fix it, he said. Emily took the box but did not open it. No, it doesn't. I know. She looked at his sling. You should sit down. I'm fine. You're not. A small, tired smile touched his face. No, I'm not. For the first time, Emily almost smiled too. Then the moment passed. Alexander looked at her with quiet honesty. I care about you. I should have understood that before I hurt you. Maybe I did understand, and was too much of a coward to name it. Emily's breath caught slightly. He did not move closer. I am not asking for an answer. I am asking for the chance to become someone who deserves one someday. Emily looked at the place where the bracelet had fallen the night before. I don't know if I can trust you. I know, but today, you told the truth. It was late. Yes, she said, but it was still the truth. Outside the mansion, night settled over the estate, and far away, in the back seat of a black car leaving the Whitmore property, Victoria Hayes stared at the lights of the mansion through the rear window. Her phone buzzed. The unnamed contact sent one message. We still have the old file on Emily. Victoria's mouth curved slowly. For the first time that day, she smiled, because Alexander had returned Emily's name, but Victoria believed she still had something powerful enough to take it away again. Victoria Hayes left the Whitmore mansion with one final weapon hidden in the dark, but inside the house she had tried to destroy, Emily Carter stood in silence with the repaired gift box in her hands, and a truth she still did not know how to carry. Alexander had given her name back. That mattered. But it did not erase the sound of the bracelet hitting the marble floor. It did not erase the way people had stared at her, or the cold command in Alexander's voice when he told her to leave. A public truth could repair a reputation. It could not heal a heart overnight. For the next few days, Emily stayed away from the mansion. She did not return to work. She did not accept money from Alexander, even when Daniel called on his behalf and said the legal team had prepared compensation for the damage to her employment record. Emily only asked for one thing, written proof that the accusation against her had been false. Alexander made sure she received it. He also made sure every staffing agency that had turned her away received the same statement. It was formal, direct, and signed by him personally. Emily Carter had not stolen anything from the Whitmore household. Any report suggesting otherwise was false. Still, when Emily read the letter at her kitchen table in Queens, she did not feel victorious. She felt tired. The world had finally admitted she was innocent, but innocence should not have needed a billionaire's signature to become believable. On the fourth evening after the accident, Alexander came to her apartment building. No driver waited at the curb. No security stood behind him. He wore a dark jacket, his injured arm still in a sling, and carried the silver compass in a small box. The cracked glass had been replaced. The case had been polished, but not enough to erase its age. Emily saw him from her window before he rang. For a moment, she considered not opening the door. Then she remembered what she had told herself after leaving the mansion. She would no longer run from rooms where she had the right to stand. She opened the door. Alexander stood in the hallway, suddenly looking less powerful beneath the buzzing light above him. "I know I should have called first," he said. "You should have. I didn't want you to say no before I could return this." He held out the box. Emily looked at it but did not take it immediately. "You fixed it." "I had it repaired," he said, "but I asked them not to make it look new. It wasn't mine to change." That answer softened something in her expression, though only slightly. She took the box and opened it. The compass lay inside, clean but still old, the needle steady now. Her note was folded beneath it, carefully preserved. "You kept the note," she said. "Yes." "Why?" Alexander looked at her. "Because it was the first thing in a long time that made me feel seen without being measured." Emily closed the box slowly. The hallway was quiet. Somewhere behind a nearby door, a television played softly. A baby cried 2 apartments away. This was not Alexander's world. There were no chandeliers here, no polished floors, no staff waiting for instructions. Just narrow walls, old paint, and ordinary lives pressed close together. Emily noticed that he did not seem disgusted by any of it. "You came all the way here to return a compass?" she asked. "No," he took a breath. "I came to ask for a chance to know you outside the worst thing I did to you." Emily's eyes hardened with pain. "That is not a small thing to ask. I know. You hurt me." "Yes." "You believed Victoria because her lie looked expensive." Alexander lowered his eyes. "Yes." "And you believed I was guilty because the room made it easy?" He looked back at her. "Yes." The direct answers left Emily with nowhere to put her anger for a moment. He was not defending himself. He was not dressing his guilt in better language. He was standing there and letting the truth remain ugly. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said. "I am not asking you to trust me today." "Then what are you asking for?" "The chance to earn one honest conversation at a time." Emily looked at the sling on his arm. "You almost got yourself killed. I was not thinking clearly." "That seems to be a pattern." For the first time, Alexander almost smiled. "Fair." The small honesty of it broke the tension just enough. Emily stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. They sat on the front steps of the building because she was not ready to invite him inside. The evening air was warm. A neighbor's American flag, left from Independence Day, moved gently above the entrance. Alexander looked at it, then at her. The night this started was supposed to be about freedom. Emily's voice was quiet. For some people, freedom means fireworks. For others, it means being believed. He nodded. "Then I failed the simplest part." They sat in silence. After a while, Alexander said, "I care about you, Emily. I think I cared before I understood what it meant. That does not give me any right to your forgiveness. But I wanted you to hear it without Victoria in the room, without my mother, without marble floors and witnesses." Emily did not answer immediately. Her heart moved toward him. Her fear pulled it back. "You are a billionaire," she said. "I was your maid. People will turn that into something ugly." "People already turned you into something false," he replied. "I cannot control every voice, but I can choose where I stand." "And where is that?" "Beside you, if you allow it." Emily looked away, blinking against emotion she did not want him to see. "I can't promise you love," she said. "Not now. I am not asking for that. I can promise honesty. That is more than I deserve." She looked at him again. "We start there, slowly. No secrets, no games, no saving me like I am helpless." Alexander nodded. "No saving you, just standing with you." For the first time since the Independence Day party, Emily smiled. It was small, cautious, and full of pain, but it was real. Across town, Victoria Hayes sat in the back room of a private club, reading the file her unnamed contact had delivered. On the first page was Emily Carter's name. Beneath it was an old report, a photograph, and a detail from Emily's past that no one in the Whitmore mansion knew. Victoria's smile returned. Alexander could forgive an innocent maid. But would he still choose Emily when innocence became harder to prove? While Emily Carter allowed herself to smile for the first time since the Independence Day party, Victoria Hayes sat across town with an old file in her hands, preparing to turn the past into another weapon. The next morning, Emily woke before sunrise. For a few quiet minutes, she sat by the window of her apartment, watching New York slowly come alive. Cars moved below. A delivery truck stopped at the corner. Someone in the building across the street raised a small American flag that had been left out since Independence Day. The city looked ordinary, almost gentle, as if it had not witnessed the worst week of her life. On the kitchen table, the repaired compass rested beside Alexander's letter clearing her name. Emily touched the box lightly. She still did not know what Alexander Whitmore meant to her now. He was no longer only the man who had thrown her out. He was also the man who had admitted the truth in front of everyone. The man who had bled to save her. The man who had come to Queens without guards, without pride, and asked for one honest conversation at a time. That did not erase the pain, but it made walking away less simple. At the Whitmore mansion, Alexander stood in the grand hall where everything had begun. The same marble floor, the same staircase, the same chandeliers. But now the hall was empty, stripped of music, champagne, and judgment. Daniel Brooks handed him a folder. The formal notices were sent, Daniel said. The agency's confirmed receipt. The staff statements are secured. Victoria's attorney called twice. Alexander looked toward the spot where the bracelet had fallen. Good. There is one more thing. Your mother wants to speak with Emily. Alexander turned. Why? Daniel's expression remained careful. She said she owes her a direct apology. That afternoon, Emily returned to the mansion, not in uniform, not through the service entrance, and not with her eyes lowered. She walked through the front door. Mrs. Margaret Whitmore waited near the staircase. She looked as elegant and cold as ever, but something in her face had changed. Pride was still there, but shame stood beside it. Miss Carter, Margaret said. Emily stopped a few feet away. Mrs. Whitmore. Margaret glanced once at Alexander, then back at Emily. I judged you too quickly. I allowed class, appearance, and my own fear of scandal to decide what kind of woman you were before I knew the truth. Emily held her gaze. Yes, you did. Margaret accepted the answer. I cannot undo it, but I can say clearly that I was wrong. The apology was not warm. It was not emotional, but it was public, direct, and for a woman like Margaret Whitmore, almost painful. Emily nodded. Thank you. Alexander watched in silence. He did not interfere. He had finally learned that Emily did not need him to speak for her every time. Sometimes respect meant standing close enough to support her, and far enough to let her own voice be heard. Later, Emily and Alexander stood alone in the grand hall. This place feels different without everyone staring, Emily said. Alexander looked around. It should have felt different that night. I should have made it different. You cannot go back. No, he turned to her, but I can choose not to repeat it. Emily looked at the floor where the bracelet had fallen. When I stood here that night, I thought my life was over. Not because I lost the job, because I saw how fast people believed the worst of me. Alexander's voice softened. I believed it too. Yes, I will carry that. You should. He nodded. Emily looked at him then. Really looked. But today, you stood in the same room and told the truth. That matters too. For the first time, Alexander allowed himself to breathe. He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the repaired compass. I wanted to give this back again, properly. Emily accepted it. Their fingers touched for only a second, but neither of them moved away quickly. Alexander said, I love you, Emily. The words were quiet. No witnesses, no performance, no pressure. Emily's eyes glistened, but she did not answer the way he hoped. Not yet. Instead, she said, then prove it by believing me before the world puts evidence in your hand. Alexander's expression changed with the weight of that promise. I will. And if one day something from my past comes to you twisted into a lie? He frowned slightly. What do you mean? Emily looked down at the compass. Everyone has something they are afraid people will misunderstand. Before Alexander could ask more, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A message appeared. You should tell him before I do. Attached was an old photograph of Emily standing outside a courthouse, younger, frightened, holding a folder against her chest. Her face went pale. Alexander noticed immediately. "Emily?" She locked the phone too quickly. "It's nothing." But they both heard the lie. Across town, Victoria Hayes sat in a private car, watching the same photograph on her own screen. The old file lay open beside her. She had lost the bracelet game. She had lost the mansion. She had lost Alexander's trust. But she had found a door into Emily's past. And this time, Victoria would not use diamonds. She would use doubt. Back in the Whitmore mansion, Emily stood with the compass in her hand and fear in her eyes. Alexander waited, torn between the promise he had just made and the silence she had suddenly placed between them. The truth had saved Emily once, but now another secret was rising. And the question was no longer whether Alexander could expose Victoria's lie. The question was whether he could trust Emily before the next lie was even told. If you believe Alexander should trust Emily this time, press 1. If you think Emily should walk away before she gets hurt again, press 0. And if this story made you want to know what secret Victoria found in Emily's past, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for the next part, because this battle is far from over.